Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. Now, I'd thought to either take the day off or spend some time finishing up the next entry in the Diamond Dev series, but as fate would have it, pure idiocy within the games industry waits for no one, and so I'm once again sitting down, or rather standing up because there's no chair in my recording booth, to provide some much-needed signal boosting to a game journalism site who are being threatened by what appears to be a first-time indie developer who has gotten so up in his feels over a negative critique of his game that he has demanded the review be removed from the site, and if they fail to comply, he would file a DMCA against them to take it down himself. The game is Starclaw, Battle of Star Space Nebula, developed by SidAlpha. I have no idea how to pronounce that, and it was released on June 1st of this year. Links to the website as well as the developer's response will be in the description down below, and special thanks to the Twitter user Lyle for bringing this to my attention. Before I go into the full article, I want it known full well what an abomination this game actually is. There are no resolution options, and apparently the audio options, which are only accessible once you start playing the game, were only included in a recent update due to the fact that the chiptune music within the game is obscenely loud. I had my audio turned almost completely down and could still hear the music quite easily before finally locating the menu within the game. There is also no full screen option for the game, which made it a bit difficult for me to be able to record gameplay, so I did what I could. The game is a very standard and exceptionally basic shmup, with a ship that controls like a bloated warthog on a muggy summer afternoon. The enemy types are repetitive, the gameplay is obscenely boring, and the first boss I encountered was such a complete bullet sponge that it made me wonder if it was created by Bungie Entertainment. This game, which is supposedly made for PC, is an embarrassment, further accentuated as such that it is inferior to countless free browser-based games within the same genre, and yet still has the baffling audacity to charge a titanic $20 for the game itself, and then an additional separate $10 for the soundtrack. Of course, you do get a $6 discount off of the combined $30 price tag if you purchase both as a bundle. $20 for a game of this quality is an obscenity, especially considering the massive number of other shmups out there that are of far higher quality and of a far cheaper price point. This is the type of game that you would see as a first-timer's free-to-play attempt on Newgrounds or itch.io. And I don't think I even need to bother with asking people to warn others to not buy this game because, well, look at it. Who in their right minds, excepting a complete moron such as myself who had to give this shoddy developer $20 just so I could record some footage of the game and see what it was all about, would ever pay that much money for this thing? Now, I lasted a grand total of 16 minutes within the game, and probably half that time was slowly whittling down the health bar of the first boss, and even before that point I was completely bored out of my skull and wanting to stop. The level design is shoddy, drops are numerous, but finding out what all of them do is a trial and error process because who could be bothered to actually tell the player what they do? Hell, even an in-game menu option to show you a spreadsheet with images of the power-ups and an explanation of their effects would have been sufficient, but here there was nothing. I can tell that the developer wanted to create a hat tip to the bygone era of these games in the late 80s and 90s. However, it seems that no genuine thought was given as to what made designing a good shmup entailed. There are a few moments in the game where I simply stopped moving my craft and the game slowly drags it off the bottom of the screen. How far down it goes, I don't actually know. I do know that once your craft dips below the horizon, your ability to fire vanishes right along with it, which there is also no auto-fire option, which means you're constantly hammering away on your controller, which is potentially a design choice of the developer, but if it is, then to my mind it was a bad one. And the story that I was subjected to looked at about the same level as the short stories that I myself had written when I was in 3rd grade. When the Earth was still young and dinosaurs were brand new, all the way back then. With narrative lines such as, "It was like ships were, spelled incorrectly, coming out of nowhere, or as if something was controlling a black hole and sending ships by the thousands to attack and take over. In response to this threat, the Galactic Federation of Star Space Nebula called on the help of a rookie pilot to find and stop whoever or whatever was causing the invasion. Armed with a sense of adventure, Koei Starclaw jumps at the chance for another adventure." This reads like it was written by a child. But enough of me rambling about how terrible this game is and how I wouldn't even recommend it even if it were completely free, because another critic also didn't care for the game at all, and that is what has this developer so completely bent out of shape. Now, I've gotten in touch with one of the people operating the site christiancenteredgamer.com, which was kind enough to forward me the email communications between them and the developer. So let's run through a little bit of a timeline on things, and forgive me, I don't think this will be entirely in correct order, but at least it'll have a proper flow. On May 31st, the developer, who goes by Kyle, emailed Christian Centered Gamer asking if they would be willing to write a review of the game and enclosed within the email a Steam key to facilitate that purpose. All very standard from all the other indie developers out there doing the same thing. The Christian Centered Gamer, you know what? Let's just call them CCG because it's easier. CCG emailed the developer back on June 13th, letting him know that their review had been posted and also letting him know that the game score was low, but the morality score was high. Now, I'm not a fan of a morality score, but that's superfluous to this topic, so I'm just going to skip on past that and move on. The review itself was highly critical of the game, much as my own critique just was, and outlined a great deal of specifics on issues faced, bugs encountered, and problems with the overall mechanics and aesthetics. It was, in all honesty, an extremely well-written article, and I would encourage anyone interested to go give it a full read. Reminder, there is a link in the description for that article and the other public sources. Several hours later, the developer responded in an extremely negative manner, stating, "When I sent the game key in for a review, I didn't expect that it was going to be literally picked apart and slandered like it was in the review. I'm not angry because of a negative review. What angers me is how the review focused more on picking the game apart, slandering every aspect, and insulting my ability." He then linked them to a response he had posted on his own website to the review, which is extremely lengthy, and it is, for all intents and purposes, little more than a developer throwing a temper tantrum over a negative review and showing a complete disregard for any critique which could offer information that could be used for improvement, such as a quote from the review that said, "The first thing I noticed when starting up Starclaw is that the player ship is massive." To which the developer responded with, "This is of course a matter of one's opinion. I feel the player ship is just the right size."
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
In terms of the music being obnoxiously loud, which CCG also pointed out in their review, the developer had this to say. Also, the part about it being too loud, it depends on your computer's sound card. When I have the Dolby enhancements turned on my laptop, the music is louder and more clear sounding. When I turn off the Dolby enhancement, the music sounds better but lower and not as high quality, so this is an individual computer issue and not a game issue.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
I have added the ability now to lower the BGM and SFX in the game itself for people who have issues with sound cards. Also, with the Dolby enhancements turned on, the music seems to fade or prioritize certain sounds over another. And the entire response is colored in that manner and comes across as little more than petty and spiteful, which is no surprise considering where we are at now. Earlier this morning, the developer emailed them again stating, "Before I submit a copyright takedown notice to Google, I suggest you remove your defamatory review like I asked, before I seek other takedown actions as well. I can make a legal case out of this since it's not an actual review, just someone rambling on about what they don't like about the game in an unfair way and using defamatory language. As I'm the full copyright owner, I can legally do that. The post doesn't even make sense now since any issues were fixed and my game design aspects were explained." The response from CCG to that was level-headed, however the response back was anything but, continuing to claim that the review was slander against him personally, actually going so far as to say, "Give a negative review all day long, but a slanderous review with a basis on opinion, not knowing what you're talking about or just not caring what you're saying is where it gets different." And of course it didn't end there. Responding to CCG's Twitter post, the developer stated that the DMCA Takedown notice had already been filed as a case of slander, apparently either not knowing or completely forgetting that that is a clear and blatant abuse of the DMCA. But of course, he just had to follow all of that up with one last email which reads, "Do you see what you have started now? People on Twitter are all ganging up on me and my company and you are liking their tweets. This one person is now insulting me using offensive language. Do you think Jesus is pleased with what you've done now? I could definitely choose to file a lawsuit now since you've basically encouraged all these people to gang up and insult me and my business. This has gone on way too far now. The best thing to do is to immediately remove the review post and all social postings and I'll forget this all happened. I'm serious about the legal matters. I will be getting legal advice real soon if this post is not removed." Boy, if he acts like that over a Twitter post, imagine what he's going to think of this video. That should be interesting. So anyways, there we have it. An indie developer with an overpriced crap game that wouldn't even be worth your time if it was free, refusing to accept criticism and threatening legal action and abuse of the DMCA in order to silence critique in order to protect his oh-so-precious feelings. And I'm pretty sure, as we're dealing with Christian parties here, that the Bible has some pretty specific things to say when it comes to certain concepts, such as pride. Okay, so first things first. A negative critique of a video game is not slander. And because I know all of you armchair lawyers out there have probably already posted it in the comments before the video even finished, yes, it's libel, not slander because it's written. Secondly, the DMCA, short for Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and its accompanying takedown provisions are to protect against copyright infringement. It is not a tool to be used in dealing with either cases of libel or of slander. That would fit the very definition of a frivolous takedown, and it is something that if CCG so chose, they absolutely could drag Kyle's petulant little backside into a courtroom and they would win. The developer reached out to them. He provided them with a Steam key for a copy of the game so they would have the capability to write a critique of the game, and that critique was spot on. The developer doesn't get to then just turn around and hurl allegations, DMCA takedowns, and legal threats merely because he's too butthurt over them not seeing the game as a paragon of shmup video games that he himself obviously sees it. The thing is, the developer himself even touches on it within his own response.
Yeah, well, that's just like, your opinion, man.
Because it is their opinion, all of it. That is what a critique is at its very core. It is a subjective interpretation and analysis of the game, its mechanics, narrative elements, gameplay, aesthetics, and overall enjoyment. Oh sure, you can be as objective as you can, that should be a goal in fact, but at the end of the day, a critique is going to be a subjective work, and them not really finding one single redeeming quality within the game is not slander. It is their opinion, and it is their right to have it. And let's be completely honest here, this game was never going to be a success due to the quality of the game on offer in conjunction of the ridiculous $20 asking price. Likely, I will be the only person stupid enough to actually pay that amount of money, and I only did so because I had to check the game out for myself. And it really is a terrible game. This is just a simple reality. You can tell that this is this person's first game, so of course it's not going to be good. No one's first creation is ever good. Do you think my very first video here was good? God, no, of course not. It sucked, and the last time I went and actually watched that video, it made me wince in pain at how terrible it was, and I had to take several Tylenol to kill the migraine. But then again, that's the point. Your first endeavors are going to be garbage. Accept that. Learn, grow, improve, and then before you know it, you might have a creation on your hands that is pretty good, or even great that people will enjoy. But you know what will happen now? Now the Streisand effect will kick in. The existence of this video is an example of that, because within the games industry, no one likes a prissy, arrogant, stuck-up little first-timer that comes out swinging with spurious DMCA attempts and outright legal threats because he didn't like the words that some critics said about his baby, especially after he himself sought them out and asked for a review. You don't get to act like that, though, because it's in actuality a crime unto itself if they choose to pursue it legally, which this developer had better hope that his DMCA takedown requests are ignored, because if there is damage done to their site over this, they would have an extremely legally actionable position. The DMCA is a shield to protect copyright holders against infringement. It is not a hammer to be used to bash the heads of your critics, nor is it a sword of Damocles to use as a threat to attempt to force the reviewer to do what you want. That is unethical, it is immoral, and it is a surefire way to completely eradicate your reputation or any hope of ever gaining one. Welcome to the Dirty Devs, Kyle. I hope you enjoy your stay. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. I'll see you next time.